Bye bye.
So tonight we have a story called The Silk Bridegroom. And it's a story about a young woman named Penina. And it opens where she is sitting in a wicker chair out in the garden in the courtyard of the house. And it really seems like a wonderful, peaceful thing that you should be able to do and read her book. But she's on edge. Why? Because every couple of minutes she hears from her house this slam. You see, her mother is interviewing matchmakers. It's time for Penina to be married. And in this world, you went through matchmakers to give you some help. And poor Penina is sitting there listening to her mother dismiss every man in town. Too short, too shabby, too skinny. The minute she saw their pictures, she judged them immediately and said, forget it, I'm not interested. This is not the person for my daughter. Now Penina heard a matchmaker asking her mother, well, tell me, what is it that you're looking for? And her mother said, I require three things. One, be as beautiful as my daughter. Two, be as smart as my husband. And three, be as rich as me. Slam! Penina knew what that meant. The matchmaker had left in disgust because they didn't figure there could be anybody that could suit her mother. So Penina poked her head into her mother's office, saying, Mom, maybe you could work a little bit with the matchmakers. You know, what can you tell from pictures? Maybe we should actually meet some of these young men before you dismiss them. Why waste time? Her mother said. I always judge people by the way they look, and it's made me a rich woman. If someone is rich, then I charge them more. If someone is poor, then I refuse them alone. Why should I change my ways now? Well, Penina couldn't exactly find fault with her mother was saying, but she knew it was wrong. It just didn't make any sense. She was just about to open her mouth to argue a different argument with her mother when a servant stood in the doorway very nervously. She said, very old man here to see you. Ma'am, shabby clothes, big sack on his back. Shall I send the beggar away? Yes, and don't interrupt us again, Penina's mother said. No, wait, Penina said, leading across the desk. How can you be sure he's a beggar? Maybe he's a prince in disguise or the prophet Elijah for all you know. And she kind of laughed a little bit. Her mother said, all right, you have such an imagination. Please invite the gentleman in. The door opened and an old man entered slowly. Penina thought he was a beggar. But apart from his untidy hair and dusty boots, there was an air of amusement in his face. He stood there and he looked at Penina up and down and said, yes, no problem. This one should be easy. What will be easy, said her mother. Why, finding your daughter a husband, of course, said the old man. Why else would a matchmaker be here? You're a matchmaker? She stammered. Something told me you might need my help. You're right, Penina said, taking his hand and leading him away. Mother, we won't disturb your work any longer. Her mother stood in the doorway, kind of watching them and said, don't forget, as beautiful as my daughter, as smart as my husband, and as rich as me. So what did Penina and the matchmaker decide? They would hold a banquet the very next day, and all the eligible men from the region would be invited to come. Upon hearing this, her mother's expression turned kind of sour and saying, if we do all the work, why do I need to pay a matchmaker? Because if no one suits us, Mother Penina said, you don't have to pay him a penny. The matchmaker nodded his head cheerfully in agreement. Penina's mother opened her mouth. She closed it again. Finally, she just tossed out her rumph and went back to work. So it was settled. The following day, the dining room was packed with young men wearing gold rings, young men wearing fancy clothes, young men examining the furniture in the house very carefully. Poor Penina frantically tried to get the matchmaker's attention, but he was busy looking over the heads of the crowd as though he was expecting someone else to come. Just as dessert was being served, a young man entered the dining room. Hesitatingly, he pushed his little round glasses up higher on the bridge of his nose and blushed at the sight of Penina. He was a student, she guessed, for his clothes were frayed at the cuffs and collar, and one shoulder was weighed down with a book bag. The servants took no notice of him, but the matchmaker rushed over to him and gave him a seat right next to Penina. Her mother was having none of this, though. Poor and late, she worried at the matchmaker. Is this the kind of husband you have in mind for my only daughter? She stood, yanked the student up from his chair, and said to everybody, out, all of you get out of here. Stop eating my food. Penina watched as all of her guests rushed out the doors. And she thought, well, she's probably never going to be able to get married because nothing will ever suit her mother. But her eyes wandered to the window, and she saw the matchmaker talking with the poor student, searching for through his bag. And she thought, no point. There's nothing that he could do that could make her mother accept this student. But the minute she turned away, there was another knock on the door. And she flew to it, and there was a tall man in a silk suit who bowed low. Who is this and what do you want? Said his mother's voice from the office. My name is Isaac, and I'm here for the banquet. What are you doing? What are you here so late? But then her mother walked out and she saw his fancy suit and said, well, maybe the banquet isn't over. Come sit down. I'm so sorry, Isaac said, but I was giving a lecture at the university and couldn't come sooner. He grinned at Penina while adjusting his little round glasses. She smiled back at him, her face as rosy as his. Then the matchmaker came, beautiful, smart, and rich, just what you ordered. Penina's mother didn't even bother to answer it because she was already dreaming about the wonderful grandchildren that she would have. So on the day of Penina and Isaac's wedding, a crowd was around the chuppah waiting for the bride and groom to enter. Everybody was excited. The guests were talking and there was joyful music coming out and the rabbi was ready and waiting. Finally, Isaac's parents walked out the hall, and between them, what were they carrying? A fancy suit and silk scarf? The clapping stopped. The music stopped. The rabbi looked kind of stern because what kind of wedding was this going to be? Penina, on the other hand, was trying to hide a smile from her mom. The matchmaker stood in the crowd, apparently lost in thought. He wasn't going to be any help at all. And then suddenly Isaac walked out wearing his ragged student's clothes. He picked up the fancy scarf and gave it to Penina's mother. When I came dressed in my own clothes, you threw me out. But when I returned wearing these fine garments, you wanted me to marry your daughter. I thought it was my clothes, not me, that you wanted for a son-in-law. So here they are. Penina nodded in agreement. He's right, mother. The suit is beautiful, smart, and rich. Penina's mother looked from her daughter to Isaac and back again, and she realized that, you know what? She had been outsmarted. So what could she do? She kissed her daughter, hugged her son-in-law, soon to be son-in-law rather, and proclaimed, let the wedding begin. And when the wedding was over and the dancing started, Penina's mother tried to find the matchmaker so that she could pay him his fee. But you don't go looking for Elijah. You have to wait for Elijah to come looking for you. So that was our story for tonight. I kind of like that idea of that sort of wonderful thing of his mother being outsmarted. I'm going to put, oops, there we go. I always forget to hit the return. I've got the Havdalah blessings now in the chat for those of you who want to follow along with them. All right. Oh, I have the matches over here. I can see where I put the matches. Die die da 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 die 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 da 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 die 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 da 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 die die da da die da 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 die. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen Borei Puri Hagafen. Die 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 die. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei minei v'samim. Borei minei v'samim. There we go. My candle gets to be too much of a mess if I light it too far ahead of time. I die 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 die. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Borei me'orei ha'esh. Borei me'orei ha'esh. I die da 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 die 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 da 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 die die. I die da 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 die die da da die da 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 die. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamandil ben kodesh lecho, ben or lecho shak, ben yom hashvi'i l'seisha tameh hamase. Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh lecho. And we say goodbye Shabbat as we dip our candles in our wine of red juice. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishvi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimhira v'amenu. Ya Abahu Aleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David. I invite you to unmute yourself for Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov,
Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov. Shavuot,
a good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign, joy and praise. A good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign and joy and praise. So Shavua Tov, everyone. Next week there is a special program that is taking place at 8 o'clock rather than our regular 7 o'clock one here. If you're on Facebook and want that Zoom link, contact the Temple Concord office and they can get that to you. If you don't get the happenings, it'll be in the happenings, and we will be back here again in 2 weeks. Figure out what
so the program next week is part of Highest Refugee Shabbat, and they're going to have a musical presentation with it as well, along with Havdalah. So it's nationwide for Refugee Shabbat. So hopefully that will be a special evening. It's clearly a bonus with Havdalah. And so we will be back in 2 weeks individually, but we'll make Havdalah together next week with people from all over through Highest.
Thank you. I didn't actually get it. I knew that, but I didn't have all the information in front of me. So that's what you can look for. And now we say goodbye to those who are on Facebook.
Yes.
Evan, if you could take us off of that, appreciate that.
Thank you.